Welcome, everyone. We are Lumen. We build leaders and teams while training in continuous innovation. And I'm Tirza Hollenhorst. I'm the CEO at Lumen. And today I am live with Philip Horvath, our Chief Creation Catalyst. And I'm really delighted to be here with him because intelligence is one of these areas that Philip has such deep expertise and is a topic that we don't actually get to speak about very often. Over the past few months, we've been sharing our toolkit for strategic planning. And today we're looking at the part of strategic planning where we really begin to build and look at repeatable processes and how we make things easier in the world of work. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you much. Excited to be here with you and talk intelligence. It's obviously a favorite topic of mine.
It is a favorite topic of yours. And so, Philip, oftentimes when people hear the word intelligence, they have a different definition than the one that we're using with regard to our specific framework here. So maybe you can tell us a bit about what you mean when we're talking about intelligence.
Sure. I think when we talk about these different phases, and when I thought about this particular phase, the reason I call it intelligence is really more about the idea of intelligence in the sense of military intelligence or information, right? Because in the end, when you think about a business or any process, in the end, in so many ways, it's about delivering information to the right person at the right time, right? And really, if you think about an organization, it's a big, huge machine of information flow. And so you want to make sure that that happens intelligently, because a lot of times, when I talk to people, find that information gets stuck or doesn't get delivered right or doesn't get to the right person, or people collect information somewhere that never actually makes it anywhere. So how do we make sure that information is being passed? And information can be anything around the exchange of understanding. Right? If you think about even your customer or internal customer, they're also looking to you to provide information, like there's interfaces into your department or into your organization where they're looking to find out things. And so intelligence is really all about how can we build elegant systems that take care of that information flow in a way that takes the least amount of effort.
And how should we be thinking about that when we're approaching just the basics of strategic planning? What's the role of that in strategic planning?
Very important in strategic planning and the way we set up this process. If you think about these first few steps of signal and possibility, feasibility, and commitment, right? Those overlay with having a purpose, but why you're doing what you're doing, a big picture. Then you have a vision. You have a portfolio of items that you've begun to test and look at. These are the major pieces that you'd like to accomplish with your strategic plan, and then you make your commitments around the metrics you want to move as a result of it, by which you're tracking yourself. So on a strategic planning level, now intelligence is essentially the iteration of this whole thing, right? Because you're planning on various levels inside of the organization. And the idea being here that in intelligence is really now going for these first few steps for each of the items you've identified in your portfolio. Let's say you're an executive team, you've done your first round of this process, you're getting to the point of intelligence, or you've completed commitment, you're all clear on what you're trying to move. Now you would take the things that you're taking ownership for in your portfolio and go to your team and go through the same process for each of those portfolio items. We have a clear understanding of purpose that you share with your team. You have a clear vision of what it's going to look like when it's done, that you share with your team, that your team can see themselves in, right? And you go and develop the portfolio of items that need to happen to make that particular portfolio item happen. And so in an organizational strategic planning cycle, you would now cascade down all the way to the most appropriate level of detail, right, in which you want to have the portfolio items detailed out for your planning process. Because then in the next phase, in resources, you can now attach the necessary pieces to each of these steps and roll back up and have a really clear idea of what's going to take you to actually implement your strategic plan.
I love how this process really starts with purpose and then gets you down to your resource allocation. I know a lot of people, when they're thinking about their planning process, they start with resources. There's this like, okay, we have this much money, and then they start divvying it up rather than starting with, well, what are we really here for? And how are we going to achieve that? And then what resources do we need? And so the appropriate structure kind of gets flipped on its head sometimes.
Well, I mean, especially now, I think it's more important than ever, because if you have relative certainty, right, if your last year's budget's probably going to look like next year's budget, more or less, then it's understandable that people get into the habit of kind of copy and pasting the strategic plan from last year and then just going for the items and say, hey, do we need a little bit more, a little bit less? You know, we have to save some money because we got this corporate mandate. Where we're going to take that out of our P&L, right? And where can we make a bit more, maybe, right? But they're not looking at why are we doing this in the first place, right? And this is, I think, over the last couple of years, the good news is we've had a lot of these conversations around customer centricity, right? And I think really customer centricity goes right back to purpose, because if my purpose of whatever I'm doing is not ultimately solving someone's problem, right, providing information to someone or giving someone the resources that they need, why am I doing it? Right. And so I think really what this process does is it refocuses you back on why you really what you're doing, and being flexible around how you're doing it as well, right? And allowing you to be a bit more adaptable, because you might, do a very different thing next year than you did last year.
I really appreciate that, putting the customer at the center. And something we were talking about today is when we begin to think about all of our processes, all of our intelligence is really serving these touch points of customer experience, then what you want really, what the output is some type of experience for the customer. You want to lay that out for people?
I mean, that's the ultimate measure, right? I mean, if you think about any system, ultimately, if you think about all these tasks or items in your portfolio, they are all things that either need to be done once or need to be done regularly again and again, right? And either case, done once or done again and again, ultimately they have to serve someone, right? If you're not solving someone's problem, why are you doing what you're doing, right? In some way, it has to have that customer in the end. And so when you now build systems, right, and you look at a system, the basic definition or basic approach to a system is something goes in, something goes on, and something comes out, right? Input, process, and output. So you build a system, stuff goes in that you need, resources that you might need, or tools or activities. Then something goes on, right? The actual activities that are taking place, and the outcome of it is the result of that system, of what it continues to spit out. And in this case, it should always, always, always be an experience for someone. Right? Because in the end, whether it's an external customer or an internal customer, someone's experiencing you in every email that goes out to them, every website they see, every communication that you're having with them, any exchange whatsoever, right? From first awareness, and you look at your channel strategy, for example, in a business model context, from first awareness of how they even know about you, to allowing them to evaluate you, to actually purchasing at some point and you delivering and staying in touch with them afterwards. Every one of those pieces is a potential experience. Right? And so for each of these experiences, that's the output of a system you now need to build. Right? And so when you start from there, you actually build the system more effectively, right? This is the effective part, in the sense that you're actually doing the right thing. Because you're doing the right thing because it's solving someone's problem. It's creating an output that's the experience you want to generate for someone. Right? So you've taken care of the effectiveness. And now the second part is to think about the efficiency and think about how can I accomplish that result in creative ways and with the least amount of resources, right? In the most sustainable fashion, right? Because especially if I do it regularly, I'm going to have cost involved, right, of doing this. So how can I design the system from the very get-go in a way that I'm really focused on the experience? And then I don't get lost in the how, right? Because sometimes we do things, and I look at a lot of marketing activities and things that are out there where I see a ton of money being wasted, and to create something that ultimately is the highest paid opinions person in the room kind of thing, right? Because they thought it was a cool idea, but they're missing the actual end result of the experience of the person. And so if it's not there, then what's the point of spending any money on anything if you're not creating an experience? You could have created the same experience with some really low cost and simple ways, maybe, if you had focused on that in the first place.
You've got a really simple little framework for people who are looking at any task that starts with eliminate. You want to share that with us, Philip, as to how we should be kind of evaluating anything we're doing?
Totally. Well, there's a beautiful saying that goes that if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, because obviously they know how to get stuff done. But there's also a saying that if you want something done well, give it to a lazy person, because they'll figure out how to not actually have to do it, right? And if you think about doing it, in the end, we all want to be creative, right? We're trained in the idea that we are meant to be repeating processes, but especially in a way, in a world of where AI is, taking care of those things very quickly, we get to actually be creative. And in this case, now when we have a task, start with, okay, does it even need to get done? Right? Coming back to, is it really effective? Is it something that really serves the purpose of what we're doing here? And if it can't be eliminated, then the next question is, can I automate it? Right? Today, we have so many great tools available to us that allow even people that don't know how to code or program to set up automations online, right? With systems that have automated workflows. So is there maybe a way to do this automatically so I don't have to pay attention to it? I think about a very personal example, even your bills, right? Your phone bill, you can actually spend some time every month paying your phone bill, or you can put it on auto pay, right? Because you kind of know what it's going to be like anyway. And hopefully you're not surprised when you actually get that invoice. But why spend your precious time on something that's repeatable process, right? It can be automated. So if you can't eliminate it, think about how you can automate it. And if you can't automate it, the next consideration is, can you delegate it? Right? Is there maybe someone out there that either is better at doing what you're trying to do here, or is cheaper at trying to, doing this? Right? Because in real time, ultimately, you have an opportunity cost every hour you spend, every minute you spend on something, you don't spend on something else. So maybe you can delegate this task to either someone who's much better at it and can do it quicker than you, or do a better quality than you do, or delegate it to someone that, as I said, is a cheaper resource because that frees you up to do more again. Right? And if you can't, eliminate it, and you can't automate it, and you can't delegate it, appreciate it. Right? Make it a thing that actually you do with full heart and full intention. Right? I do that oftentimes when I do have to do things like laundry or wash the dishes. And it's not a task that I particularly enjoy by default, but it can't be eliminated, and I can't automate it quite yet. Right? And it can be delegated, or could be delegated, but I choose not to. So then I'm doing it, and actually while I'm doing it, I'm really getting excited about it. I'm enjoying washing the dishes. I'm actually making it a meditative exercise and enjoy the process of doing it, even if it's a task that I don't generally particularly care for.
I love this. And as an entrepreneur, it becomes so important for me to be thinking about, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And who else could be doing this? I think there's a lot of things that all of us do because we did them in the past. And somehow we were valued for doing that task in the past. And what I really hear underneath that framework is an opportunity to be continuously growing, to be continuously looking at, okay, if I already know how to do this, it's no longer my growth edge. So how can I have it happen in another way and move forward in something that's my growth edge? But I think for so many of us, we gain a certain level of expertise in a domain. And rather than continuously seeking the edge of the new thing, we tend to get comfortable in our domain. And so what I really hear you calling for is people in this world of work to really, how can you get your job done in another way than you doing it, and continuously move forward into the next thing?
Well, it's beautiful that you mentioned that, and I think it's actually here we are talking about systems and processes, and thank you for bringing it back to the human, because I think you're absolutely right. I think the idea is a continuous learning, continuous evolution, with the stability of having processes and systems that support you in doing that. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of us, have been kind of turned off from learning. Right? It starts with, in school when you get a bad grade, and when college students ask, is this going to be in the midterm? And you think you're finally done with college, you're finally done learning, so now you can just do your job and maybe learn the 2-3 things you need to learn to do the job, and then you just will be left alone. Right? Because learning comes at a cost. Learning comes with potential failure. Learning comes with potential social implications. Right? So as you're growing and developing, it is a scary notion. So a lot of people are very comfortable with actually stopping that and being frustrated even or angry when you start challenging or inviting them to do it differently. And at the same time, if you give them the permission and the joy of doing that, then it can come out again. But I remember that my initial career was in efficiency consulting and to some extent financial systems and processes. And so many times I would walk in and talk to the subject matter experts of a particular process or domain. And after building some trust and connection, I would ask them, it's like, could this be done better? And they would say, yeah, I think you could do this and this and this. And I said, well, why are you not doing it? Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the permission to do these things here. I don't want to stick my head out. And so I always played this game. I said, let's take your solution. If it works, you're the hero. And if it fails, blame the consultant. And really what I did was create a safe space for them and a little bit of respite from their daily operations to actually stand back and look at what they're doing every day and go, you could do this better. Right? And all it took was that, and then they got excited, and there was this like childlike joy again that came out when they actually got excited about designing their job away, right? And I think this is a big part of it, right? This idea that oh shit, I have to focus on job security. Nobody can know how I'm doing this, right? And so I'm saying, hey, cool, if I can automate that, how cool, then I can do something more and can do something better. And every time I've seen that in an organization with people I've worked with, if they've actually eliminated themselves from their job, they usually got a better job afterwards, right? Because people said, wow, you can do that? Can you do this over here? Right? Can you do this over there? There's even some sci-fi author, I forgot the name right now, that in the 70s suggested that people should be paid 30% of their salary in perpetuity if they manage jobs to leave themselves from their job. Right? And I always loved that idea, because if we did that, then we would encourage people to do exactly what you're talking about, to continue to learn and grow and look at their daily job, not as a process that they have to execute on, but as a cool problem to be solved and figured out how to automate. Right? And it will become playful again. And I think this is really where we're looking at the future of work, where nearly everything that's repeatable will be taken care of by technology. So if you're still stuck in that mindset of, oh, I don't want to change, I would rather just do how I've always done things, your job will probably be eliminated. And again, that's not horrible, because why would you want to have a drudgery, do everything the same thing every day kind of job, when you could be playing and learning and growing in a safe way, right? And I think this is why what you hinted at was so important, is that we really start with setting up a psychologically safe environment for people to actually even have that creativity access to come up with really good solutions, right? Rather than just defaulting to how it's always been done, right? Because from a fear perspective, we're going to stick to the old way of doing things no matter what, right? Because it's safe, right? Or this is how my boss told me I should do it. Right? Instead of actually saying, well, I have the liberty to think about how this could be done better and really come up with better systems.
What I also hear in that is having a process inside the organization where people can suggest new ways of doing things, test if they're appropriate, and actually implement. And this is kind of what I think we think about with kind of small I innovation, is these small improvements that can happen all across the organization and really in almost any process. And if we give people the freedom to think about that, and the opportunity to test things, and really what I also hear is the reward for growth, that they don't need to fear that they're going to actually eliminate 30% of their job and then suddenly they're not going to have a job, but actually be rewarded for creating the efficiency, and then move on to the next problem.
I mean, you mentioned a couple of things. I think the environment, the culture of doing that is important. The psychological safety to do that is important. And as you said, to give people a process to do it as well. Right? I'm actually talking at an innovation conference next week, and we're going to talk about how innovation used to be sort of the privilege of the few, right? Like these few people who were more innovative and kind of crazy people anyway. They had their little department over there, and they were coming up with new ideas of how to do things. Well, now we need new solutions everywhere throughout the organization. So in a way, the job of innovation experts is changing inside of the organization too, from practitioners to teachers, right? Because we need now, what you said, teach everybody in the organization to look at their job and look at, how can I really bring my creativity to solving this problem rather than just executing on it. And it's a real transformation in terms of even how your brain works. Right? Most people are used to simply going down the same pathway all the time, right? To get to the Monday morning office and get their coffee and go to the desk and fill out the same forms and do that same thing all the time. They've been trained to do that. Right? What we now require them to do is to actually turn on both sides, right? And be creative and create processes around these new inventions and have a process, like you said, to turn ideas into actual concrete solutions, testing them in the process and making sure that what they bring out actually has some merit, right? And coming back to that outcome orientation, really continuously focusing on creating value for someone and really solving someone's problem.
That's really where I was hoping to bring it back, was that at the end of the day, all of this is just to improve the experience for your customer, whether that's an internal customer or an external customer, and that all of these are just opportunities to create a better experience.
So and systems are there to support the human experience, because otherwise the human experience is there to support systems, and I don't think that feels particularly good, and I don't think that's where we want to go in the future either, because otherwise we're going to be in some weird technological dystopia.
Well, thank you, Philip, for helping us make systems and processes feel like a vital part of the human experience, and appreciate how they actually support us in finding greater creativity. Thanks for joining us, everybody.